Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to tutorial 6. This particular tutorial is going to change keys. It's going to be in the key of C major, and I'm going to create a slow, easy listening piece, an improv that's relatively easy to play and can get you comfortable with a different chord progression in a major key. So again, I've got my camera sitting up looking at two of my keyboards, so I'm going to focus specifically here today on my two Roland keyboards. And I'll use the Jupiter X for a bass up here, and then the piano and other instruments on the Fantom. I'm also going to reference a little bit the drum machine. This is a Roland TR8S, and although I haven't dived too deep into it, I've got a rhythm pattern set up here. I also have a preset on the Jupiter X, which is Bank 3 Program 5 out of the stock Jupiter X, that just has a nice drum beat to it, very slow and peaceful, plus a nice bass line. So, a very easy listening kind of a improv today. Now, we're going to be in the key of C major, and that is usually the first scale that musicians on a keyboard learn. It goes from C to C on the keyboard. The nice thing is it has no sharps or flats, and all the keys of the key, that particular scale, are white notes, so it's a very easy pattern. You're not going back and forth with a lot of the keys or scales that you do go into the black and white notes combine. And so with the C scale, C major scale, it's all pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to play the C major chord, which is an C, an E, and a G. That is the primary chord position. An inversion is E, G, and C, and another version is G, C, and E. That's going to become important because that will give you some variation in the improvisational sequence as you see as we get further into the tutorial. Now, so that is the primary chord that we're going to play, but we're going to add what's called a seventh to that, which in this particular scale, if you walk up 7 tones on the scale, you end up with a B. It's right before the next C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is a full octave. So a C major 7th chord is a C chord with a 7th added to it. It adds a little modern soft touch. If you arpeggiate it, it's kind of a jazzy. Now, that's the first chord of the progression. I'm going to show you the other chords in this progression that we're going to use. Again, every one of these chords I play for you. As you get to learn them, you can put them in your toolkit, and then the respective progressions or the sequence of chords you can put in your toolkit and then start playing around with it. So for the C major 7th chord, I hit a C for the bass, and then at least the E, G, and B. That is the C major 7th chord. Now, I'm going to go up one whole set of white notes from the G to the A to the D, sorry, D minor 7th. Here's a D minor chord. It has D, F, and A. I don't want to get too detailed into music theory. I'm just saying, look at the pattern. We're going to go from this pattern to right one up. That's D minor. I'm going to go one up. Here's E minor 7th. And then here's F major 7th. Get comfortable with that. Okay. That is one of the, that's the primary chord progression for this improvisation today. Now, once you get comfortable with playing those chords, I'm going to add another chord. So there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 different chords. Now, the other thing I'm going to show you is to go from an E minor 7th down to an E flat major, E flat minor 7th. So going straight down a half tone for every key that I'm playing here. A half tone is exactly, the half tone down is actually one note on the keyboard down from every key I'm playing. So the E goes to an E flat, the G goes to a G flat, the B goes to a B flat, and the D goes to a D flat. Okay, so the nice thing about this is that this particular chord sequence is very easy because you don't have to sit there, what notes am I playing? Because right off the bat, you know a pattern. The pattern is C, E, G, B. In the normal C chord, it is 4 notes on the keyboard, 4 white notes separated by individual notes between them, white notes. So you don't have to, it's like these are the sequence right now. Now, the one exception to that is going from the down to an E flat minor 7th right there. Okay, so now that you've got those 5 chords, okay, we can just play a little bit. I'm going to start the first improvisation with those chords. I'm going to add the rhythm section up here on the Jupiter X, and we're going to just play around with those chords and going up and down there. So okay, now I want to mention one thing there. Again, when I'm playing, for example, the C 7th chord, and I have a bass note that's C, I can reproduce this arpeggiation up here without playing the C note, because the C is part of the fundamental, the bass. So what I want to do is, if I'm doing an arpeggiation, I want to play the other 3 notes of this major 7th scale and repeat those. So what you'll see as I'm doing this arpeggiation of the chord I don't have to use the C. I'm just doing the E, the G, and the B. And if I'm doing the A minor 7th, and then the E minor 7th, and then down, okay? So that right there is kind of the body of the improvisation. One of the keys is that as you're working on this improvisation, get comfortable with playing the chords first. So don't worry too much about runs at this point. But the more you can kind of embellish and change the chord inversions, which means just moving up and down the keyboard, and also playing those as kind of almost a arpeggiation of the chord, the more you can make variations. Again, improvisation is about a set of tools in your toolkit. As you build that set of tools, you can apply it to almost any key, any progression, and it will help augment that particular improvisation with variations on your original theme. So I'm going to add now one more addition to that. I'm going to go from C major 7th to D minor 7th, E minor 7th, F major 7th, but I'm going to change this to, I'm going to move the bass from an F to a G. This is actually an F major 9th. Hear that? That's a very rich sound. And what it's made up of is an F, A, C, E. That's an F major 7th. And go up one more on the keyboard to a G. But I'm playing the G on the bass. If I don't play the E within the F chord, it's called an F/G chord. But it's kind of nice to add that one embellishment. F major 7th gives it more complexity, more richness. So remember, that's an A, C minor, or C major 7th, a D minor 7th, E minor 7th, F major 7th, and F major 9th. And now I can add a G. You're familiar with the G chord. A G 7th. That's kind of a nice transition back to the C. So again, if I'm... There's an F major 9th, like I said. Again, the G is not played F, A, C, E, G. I'm playing the G down on the bass. And then going to a G 7th. A G 7th is the same as an F 7th. See, if I go up to G 7th, I'm going from F major 7th. The next pattern up again, one more set of notes, is a G 7th. So you'll see that right there. Okay. All right. Now, as far as the drum patterns, I've got a couple drum patterns set up, but if you have a keyboard that has a rhythm package on it, or you've got a digital audio workstation, pick a nice drum beat that's slow, maybe 60, 70 beats per minute, and this is just going to give you a nice relaxed ambient rhythm as I go play around with that chord progression. The key is, no pun intended with key structures, but the key is to just get comfortable with the patterns, not having to really say, oh, well, that chord is such and such. But because the pattern is so nice and so repeatable, it makes it easy because your pattern recognition of your brain will help you know approximately where the next chord is. Now, so let me do a couple variations on that. I'm a little scrunched with this camera positioning and all that, so I apologize. I don't have the flexibility that I do when I'm usually playing. But I'll get by here, and we'll start this and see how it goes. Again, in order to do the inversions on these keys, I'm going to play different chord positions of those respective chords that I told you, different inversions, and I'm going to just arpeggiate the notes of those. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so I did add a variation on the theme, which you probably heard. Instead of just going up all the time and then changing this, I also went to an alternate progression from a C minor seventh or C major chord to a B flat major chord down to an F major chord. Okay, those are the only chords in this progression. That's it. I'm not going to add any more chords. And you probably saw I added a few grace notes, transitional notes to go from one chord to the next. But that's just once you get comfortable with playing the chords and playing the notes within those chords, sometimes you can add another note into the progression that helps you transition and eases the the listener's ear into where you're going to go next. It's just a little bit of what they call a grace note or a transitional note transition that helps your audience lead or follow where you are leading them. Okay? So I'm going to play another rhythm here. I'm going to use the TR8S here, and I've got a kind of a slow southern drawl sound here. Okay, that is it for tutorial 6. Again, as you play around, remember we're really doing these 7th chords, and then within the F major 7th, you can go from an F major 7th and move the bass note up to a G while playing that F major 7th, and you get to an F major 9th, which is a beautiful chord. Kind of a jazzy, soft. Okay, and then so that's the primary progression with a E flat minor chord in there to actually help with the transition back to the C major 7th. And then again, as a variation on that chord progression, try going from a C to a B flat major chord to an F major chord. And then when you finally get done with that and you're actually playing around, you can also try some grace notes. We'll get into grace notes, transitional notes in a little different tutorial, but it's kind of like this. So it's, in other words, it's using your high notes to help with the transitions and create a little bit of unique melody on the top of the chord progressions. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. As always, if you have any comments or suggestions or recommendations or things you'd like me to cover, please go ahead and add them into the comments, and I'll be listening, and we'll continue on this series for at least a couple more times and see where it goes. So take care, God bless, and hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.